imagine the scene here. There's only just about 30 seconds to go. It's Oxford 3, Blackburn Rovers 1. Porter has scored for Oxford. The supporters are standing up in front of us, and the referee has called time, and a great invasion now. All the spectators coming on the field for Oxford. 21,000 people here, and I think already there's probably about 5,000 on the field. We can't see the players. The players have been surrounded by the supporters. The police just can't do anything about it. It's an amazing scene here at Headington.
What happened at Oxford United? The spirit grew. It grew and it got better and better and better. I mean, it makes a good story. It really does. Absolutely.
When it might be, and lifted high on the shoulders of the crowd is Atkinson, the skipper of Oxford. It could be Wembley. Well, one never knows. Oxford might even get there, but here in rather more subdued form.
There seemed to be quite a lot of anti-Headington feeling in the town in the early days. A lot of people had been brought up as Oxford City supporters. Headington, more or less a village team to them, I think, in the early days. I remember one supporter telling me wild horses would never get him to the manor ground, but I did eventually see him there.
Oxford Mail, 5th of May, 1949. Headington United completed their Spartan League programme last night when they visited Chelsea Mariners and defeated them by 4-1. This victory places them a little higher in the league than last season.
I've always said that the biggest step that Headington made was going from Spartan League football into Southern League professional football.
It came to the meeting and we got in by one vote. And Llanelli had 9, we had 10. And it was only afterwards when Mrs. Cooling and myself went to Jack Jones' hotel in Hereford, when he and Len Weston, who was the soldier man, told us that Hereford had voted for us and not Llanelli, as they were first going to.
And they were, of course, over the moon when they came home, weren't they? And said, "Oh, we're in the Southern League proper. Great, great." Until they realised, I think, what the repercussions were likely to be. Because of the ground had to be upgraded. But the work commitment from so many people was incredible.
When they put the drains in for the new dressing rooms, which is down on the corner of the ground, I asked for volunteers, and I was thinking we had about 300 people up there with bloody spades and shovels to dig us out. They'd have dug the whole manor ground up in no time. They was that keen.
Other people were making concrete slabs on the ground, putting them all one day, and then the following day they were set, and we built them into terraces. They were all people that loved the club and grown up with it, you know, and were determined for it to be a success. There was no question of anybody ever wanted any payment.
Not very successful the first season, quite a struggle. But I remember Harry Thompson seemed to be carrying them on his own back at one time, playing centre half, manager. Did it very well.
I think they advertised for a player manager, and initially I didn't know where Headington was, you know. I thought it was somewhere in Yorkshire.
Oh, some of the places we went to were fantastic. Merthyr Tydfil. Now, have you ever been to Merthyr Tydfil? On a Wednesday afternoon when it's hammering down with rain? That's the place to go. Wouldn't recommend it for holiday, but for football, you know, ankle deep in mud. I think they lost 8-2 that day.
The first season in the Southern League, we had to win at Weymouth to keep into the Southern League. We won 3-2. Cliff Nugent scored 2 goals and Cyril Toulouse the other goal that day. And I think we must have been met at Oxford Station by half of Headington on our return.
I remember the first time they've topped the Southern League. I think the game was played kicking off at about 6 o'clock in the evening after a FA Cup final in the afternoon. And they needed to win to be sure of the Southern League title. And Ronnie Steele, he shot one in just inside the far upright. That settled everyone's nerves. They went on to win 2-0.
I think a great deal of the credit must go to Harry Thompson, who was their first manager.
It was a question of getting a team and offering players money, you see. And Jim Howe, who was the works manager, personnel manager at Press Steel, said, if I can help you in any way, just let me know. Well, what I could do, I could find them a job at Press Steel, pay them a part-time wage, and they'd be better off than playing in full-time football.
Frank Ramshaw, who was the captain, who was a great motivator, set a good example, because he was a 90-minute player. Bobby Craig, who played in centre-half. Johnny Crichton, who was a great ball player.
I think we were the first club in the country to play a match under floodlights. And we had an electrician on the board of directors, and we had a builder on the board. So the builder got all the scaffold poles, put them all around the ground about 10 or 12 yards apart, you know. And the electrician rigged them all up with the bulbs exposed to the elements. Oh, we hadn't been playing long when it started to rain. And the cold rain started to beat in on these hot bulbs. Oh, and you can imagine what was happening. One by one they went pop. But fortunately, the rain stopped.
Oxford Mail, 21st of November 1953. Headington United, seeming to have an easy first-round FA Cup task against amateur Harwich and Parkston at Harwich today, had to fight back desperately from a 2-goal interval deficit to win by the odd goal in 5. Harwich and Parkston kicked off after Headington had won the top.
In the next round they played Millwall, drew at Millwall 3 each and won 1-0 replay at Headington. Following round was at Stockport. We drew there, no goals. In the replay, Headington won 1-0.
And then we got the big one, Lofthouse, Bolton Wanderers.
Didn't matter where you went. Even in church, there were fans who were talking about, after church, were talking about the Bolton match,
And that Lofthouse was centre forward, I know. Willie Moore was a Scottish international inside right. Headington players, well, they certainly had Bobby Craig at centre half.
It was icy. There was just no give and take there at all. I mean, it was, Lofthouse, although he was an English international, he hurled himself about, and I mean, the ground, he didn't wrap himself in cotton wool.
Temporary staging, which of course they wouldn't allow now because of the safety aspect. It was just scaffolding and planks. I think I lost 4-2, if I remember correctly.
We were in our home park, and 17,000 people were howling for us to win, and even though we got beat, we were 11 heroes that day.
A lot of the supporters in the old days, they were characters. We used to have one chap, old boy up there, he used to have about 6 or 7 handballs in his pocket. Come on, Eddie, he used to say, he used to ring these balls. Oh, blinking rubbish.
Oh yeah, always a good atmosphere, no trouble. Just one copper walked round the ground before the kick-off and that was it. All local supporters then, of course. Very few from away.
Oxford Mail, 2nd of January 1959. On his first day as the new manager of Headington United Football Club, Mr. Arthur Turner, ex-Birmingham chief, said yesterday that he will manage his new club with the same enthusiasm and loyalty as he would a Football League club. When I interviewed Mr. Turner yesterday at the Manor Ground, I gained the impression...
I got the phone call, and when he said Headington United, I thought, where's Headington? I'd never heard of it. and that's the truth. Anyway, I found out where it was, and that's when I made my way down by train and walked up from Oxford Station up to the football ground. And then when I saw it in the daylight, you see, the ground, the pitch, it had honestly, it had more docks on it than it had grass. The contract that they gave me at Oxford United was a better contract than I'd got with Birmingham City, who were a first division club. Now, you'd find that hard to believe, wouldn't you?
Arthur did a great job for Oxford. He's probably had more success than any manager at Oxford.
I remember the player saying to me, quite honestly, he came in and I said he could have his cards. I'd only been there about 3 or 4 weeks, and he said, Mr. Turner, he said, I feel sorry for you. I said, you feel sorry for me? So he said, I do. I said, well, why do you feel sorry for me? He said, well, I do. He said, you coming into this club, he says, as the manager. He says, you know, he said, all the players here, he said, they don't call this a football club, you know. He said, they don't, they call it a Christmas club.
Arthur introduced us into full professionalism even before we entered the Football League.
I mean, to give you an idea of what sort of power he had, I mean, even the directors called him boss.
The supporters club was such a big help. You see, they contributed a weekly sum of money, which helped to pay the way, you see, helped to pay the players' wages.
Well, they all came from different parts of the country. Knight came from Notts Forest, I think it was. And Jeff Denal, I think he came from Sheffield. Jones was from Birmingham. Carl was from the Wolves. Ron and Graham Atkinson was from Aston Villa.
The first thing I do remember was driving up to the ground down Beach Road, and having been used to going to grounds where everything was virtually surrounded by terraced houses and so forth, I couldn't believe the neighbourhood where the ground was. I mean, it was in quite a posh part for a football ground.
After 1952, I put our first application in for membership of the Football League. So our name every year came amongst the Wigans, the Bedfords, the Yeovilles, and all those. We felt rather proud of the fact that we were associated with them. And it was always interesting that the journalists, where's Headington?
The best thing that was ever done for the club was to change the name from Headington United to Oxford United. And there was quite a lot of opposition to that, because we already had Oxford City as a leading amateur club.
If I'd have kept a clock or a book on the amount of miles I did to get the votes, to get Oxford United into the Football League, people would never believe it, because I went all over the country. I met club chairmen, I met club managers after the votes. And how well I remember when we went to London to the annual general meeting, which I'll never forget. And there was about 5 directors that went with me, including Mr. Coppock. And they were all, think we shall make it, well, so and so. And I said, we shall make it. We shall make it. I said, if everybody honours what they said, they were going to vote for us, you see. And I can assure you of this, and I'm not being big-headed when I say this, the number of chairmen that told me, they said, well, we're not going to vote for Oxford United, Arthur, we're going to vote for you.
There was nobody on the board when they first went into the league who were millionaires. There was all local business people. Mr. Coppock, Mr. Jones, Mr. Kersey, Mr. Lees, and it was a big decision for those people.
1962, they went in the league. I can remember their first game, Barrow away. I think they lost 3-2. And I think Graham Atkinson scored the first goal in the league, if I remember correctly.
The first home game was against my hometown team, Lincoln, because I wasn't sure which team I was supporting when I went to the match. And Lincoln scored first, actually, through outside left called Scanlon, a survivor of the Manchester United air crash. But I knew immediately Oxford scored. I was an Oxford supporter nowadays because they went on to win 2-1.
Everything seemed to happen in those early years. In every 3 years, we seemed to get into the league. 3 years after the league, we won promotion. 3 years after that, we won promotion again into the second. And with the same team, we didn't have many new players.
I remember particularly Ron Atkinson leading the team out, legs smothered with wintergreen. You could smell him from several yards away, and trying to do the clever juggle on his knees with the ball, and it didn't always quite come off.
Ron, we used to call him the Tank. Come on, Tank. Because he used to go up to people and nearly knock them over. He was so big.
And whenever he put his shirt on, you always felt that you won up, you know, you were a goal up.
Ron used to tackle the wall with the ball, you know, concrete walls, and they used to go out very motivated.
So I used to just put a load of oil on my body and then try and punch anybody that was near me in the dressing room, just to get myself wound up aggressively. And I always try to get to the lads when we come out the dressing room, we explode out the dressing room. I very often used to just whack the ball up in the air as we came out.
The actual success was built on a very strong defence, you know, with Maurice Kyle, Cyril Bevan, Pat Quarterman, Ronnie. And if you go back and look at those players, they've all got 10 years service.
Cyril was, I mean, he was right back for, well, he's just right back every week. I mean, he used to have the team list, it used to say first team, and then, like Bev's name, they used to put Bev on for 42 games a season.
Pat was, like me, was one of the only local boys in the side, Pat Quartermain. Very enthusiastic player, very sturdy in the tackle. I don't know, when people are thrown together, you find this camaraderie. I mean, a terrific personality, good laugh.
And there was Blockbuster Bud Ayton. Blockbuster Bud Ayton.
Bud sometimes would say, I've seen something on television one day. He's seen Di Stefano play for Real Madrid. And we were playing somewhere, Brentford, and Di Stefano had this habit of going back and getting the ball and just taking off his own player's toes. So all of a sudden we're playing this game at Brentford and Bud starts doing this to me. He did it 3 times. I said, Bud, if you come back and do that once more, I shall volley you straight into the stand. He said, well, I'm just trying to do what Di Stefano does. I said, well, he scores as well, so get up the other end of the field and see if you can do that.
Colin Harrington was exciting but a frustrating play, you know. Some days terrible, some days mercurial, really.
Well, I suppose because of my sort of really limited ability, my sort of main feature was possibly my speed.
Colin was supposed to be the brain box. He got 15 O-levels. He was unfortunate he never had one in crossing the ball. Lightning quick.
Sometimes you go down the wing and cross the ball and we weren't there because we weren't quick enough.
Of course, they used to say, he's here, he's there, he's every blinking where. Harrington, where are you? You got old Colin, take the ball with you, you know, sort of thing.
John Shuker, myself, Graham Atkinson, all got lots of years' service. But Graham was a truly a wonderful player, and in the sense he should have played at a higher level.
I mean, look at John Shuker. Look at John Shuker, the service he did for Oxford. A lad that came down on trial from Manchester.
I came in the team in the cup run when they played Brentford at home. We drew with Brentford, went there and won the replay, and I think the next game we played was against Blackburn.
I do remember queuing halfway to Marston for one cup tie. The queue was right down London Road to Sandfield Road, right down Sandfield Road, beyond the far end of Sandfield Road. We were a long way down there, I know that, on a Sunday morning. We were all mad, weren't we?
And of course, remember that this is the 5th round of the Cup and that Oxford have had to battle all the way from the 1st round. Right up to this stage, Blackburn Rovers, of course, entered it as the 3rd. The first time that Oxford have been in this stage of the competition, but as Headington, their original name, of course, they did get through to the 4th.
I remember when we played Blackburn Rovers, And they were interviewing people. They were interviewing the wrong people in Oxford. They were interviewing the undergraduates who had nothing to do with United. Of course, when the Blackburn Rovers supporters came, we'd say, where's all these university girls? We said, what university girls? There's no university girls come up here to watch blithering Oxford United.
Right half partner Clayton, along the gun inside the centre circle, a bad one, only to Jones. Jones of Oxford, scorer of their 2 goals.
They had a galaxy of international stars, people like Ronnie Clayton, who was the England captain, Brian Douglas, Big Mike England, Fred Pickering, Keith Newton. They were all well-established international stars, top of the first division at the time.
Harding with it towards Knight on this side of the field. Knight rounding his man on the outside. McGrath goes into the tackle there, but Knight still has it in possession, tries to turn on the inside and still has possession.
I think early on in the game, I can always remember winning a challenge against Fred Pickering, who was then the hottest centre forward in the game, and I remember actually knocking him over. And the funny thing was, I looked at him then and he seemed frightened. It was the first time I'd ever seen it at play. Obviously they were nervous because they were on a hiding to nothing.
Turned away by Shuka, but not very far. Pushed back again towards the wing over the far side of the field for Blackburn Rovers. And Pickering takes the first time shot down, goes Burnley down near the post to pick it up quite cleanly, quite comfortably. Pickering took it on the turn, left-footed. It could have been a surprise one.
The Blackburn game was one of the greatest moments of my life watching football, to see an underdog be the top-notcher.
Cheering Oxford in just a minute or so, because Oxford now have possession and they're well inside the Blackburn Rovers half of the field. Quartermain for Oxford, turns it in. Right across the goal there! By Calder! Calder scored!
Unfortunately, we then played Preston in the 6th round. To this day, anybody who's at the game, we got done. The winning goal was, in everybody's opinion, except the man that mattered most, the referees, something like 5 to 10 yards offside. It was so far offside, it was laughable. And, you never know what might have happened, because if we'd have got into the semi-final that year, we'd have drawn a 3rd division side, Swansea. And we might have created a real piece of history. But that was a highlight of that season that lifted the whole season. And then I think that gave us the confidence next year to go on and clinch promotion.
Oxford Mail, 21st of July, 1964. Oxford United players report back for training tomorrow, and with their first pre-season fixture only 17 days later, new trainer-coach Ken Fish is determined to have every member of the playing staff in peak condition as quickly as possible. For the first hour tomorrow, I will have them out road running.
Probably the biggest character we all had at the club when I was there, I suppose, throughout the years, was Fishing. Or Mr. Fish, as most of us still call him.
Worked there for what, Ken? 20 odd years, I suppose Ken stayed. Did everything. Ran the training, looked after the kit, worked out the schedule for travelling. Used to always go in the hotel kitchens and work out and tell them what we wanted to eat. Big figurehead for the club, always there, always available for any players to have a chat to.
First day he came, there was a clock above the old dressing rooms, and he got up on this big ladder and we're all watching him, and he stuck sticky tape or something over the clock so we couldn't see what time it was. And he was very, very unorthodox. And I remember him training us one day in an indoor area, and his teeth fell out. And Colin Booth turned around to us all and said, look at him, even though his teeth have fallen out, but they're still chattering away even though they're on the ground.
The first thing we all noticed was that in the 3rd and 4th, if you was winning 1-0 or 2-0, you always won the game. When we went in the 2nd division, the teams that were playing, they never gave up. You knew you had to play for 90 minutes.
I tend to remember some of the bad times, when we come back from Cardiff losing 5-0. I mean, I couldn't believe it. We never even got into their half the field. Ron Saunders came when Poker staying in the 2nd division had really gone.
I remember a game at Fulham where we scored in the first minute and then defended for 89 minutes, and I think that basically kept us up, which was a tremendous game. A header off Cliff Jones well into the second half, when I think if they'd have scored then we could have struggled. Possibly one of the best saves I've ever made, to be fair.
I think I scored 2 against Aston Villa on the the Good Friday, I think, or the Saturday at the Manor, which were really the most important goals I scored for the club, because those goals kept them in the second division.
Penalties, we never had a consistent penalty taker. And the person who always should have taken penalties was Cyril Bevan, a wonderful striker of the ball.
Bev was quite a good spot kicker, although, funnily enough, I think he missed a couple. I can remember him missing one at Reading in a big game one night. He stubbed his toe, and the goalkeeper had to walk forward and dive on it. I took one, sent the goalie the wrong way, but missed.
And I remember one that Ken took at the Manor. I don't know who we were playing, but we were kicking towards the nursing home end, we used to call it, the Osler Road end. And we had a penalty, and Skeeny picked the ball and said, I'll take this. So we all said, oh, go on then, Ken, you take it. He ran up, he hit the ball well, he hit it that well. It was still rising as it went out of the ground. I think Ken had the mickey taken out of him a lot more than any other player at the time. We played, I think it was Southampton in the Cup at the Manor, and we were leading 1-0 with about 20 seconds to go, and Ken was centre forward at the time. Jimmy Barron had the ball in his hands, and for some unknown reason we'd pushed up to the halfway line, and Ken decided to run back to the edge of the box and pick the ball up off Jimmy.
I threw a ball out to Skeeny on the right-hand side, and he got robbed, and it was crossed, and Davis, well, they keep saying he scored, but he didn't score, actually, because I still think I saved it. But the referee gave a goal anyway, and it meant a replay, and we got beat down at Southampton the following week.
It was almost as if that they were a yard fitter under Ron Saunders. I think that was the rumour anyway.
He left, I can remember we were training up Shotover one morning, and he said there was a phone call, he cleared off and left us up Shotover. He'd gone to Norwich.
Oxford Mail, 29th of July, 1969. Jerry Summers, the former Wolverhampton Wanderers coach, was appointed team manager of Oxford United yesterday, the night his last club gave United a 5-1 hammering. Club chairman Mr. Ron Coppock announced, Jerry Summers has been appointed team manager and will take over his duties.
They'd come through very quickly, you see. They'd come from a Southern League club to a league club, from fourth to third to second. They'd gone too quickly, really, because they'd outgrown everything, the ground, the facilities, and players, really. Luckily, I survived that first year, and not only survived, but did well for the club, and then I had a cushion of a 3-year contract. Then you can start going.
He was an excellent coach. We did at one stage, we were playing ever so well, and we went top of the second division. We were playing like continental style, really, because we didn't have a big centre forward.
I remember when I first started going up there, my favourite player was Derek Clark, because I really liked Alan Clark, and Sniffer Clark, the Leeds player, and of course Derek was his brother. There was the 3 C's. There was Clark, Cassidy, and Curran.
Cassidy is again this big centre forward, got the image, the droopy moustache, and I think he milked the support of the crowd, really.
Hughie Curran was another character, wasn't he? Hughie Curran was a character.
Yeah, there was Hugh Curran.
Hughie was my minder for a couple of seasons. If anybody was giving me a bit of a kicking, then Hughie used to sort them out. But Hughie was a player of the highest quality, Scottish international. I mean, he could head the ball harder than most of us could kick it. My best season, when I scored the 23 goals, was playing next to Hughie.
There's a song that used to be nice one Cyril, nice one Hughie, and that was the Oxford version. I remember signings that weren't quite so good. The infamous one of Ray Gaston.
Oh, Ray Gaston. Oh, my God. He was from Coleraine. I remember I took John, didn't we, down to Southampton in the Cup.
Yeah.
And anyway, there was a substitute. Ray, come on, Ray, up Coleraine, and so forth. And he hit the corner flag.
One of the big games was the Manchester United match, where we're playing them at home in the League Cup. And we're going down the hill, the bottom end, which is always worth a goal to you, I suppose. And we're battling away, and we get the winner. So we think with 7 minutes to go, and I always remember turning to Mick Brown and saying to him, "This is going to be the longest 7 minutes you and I ever sit through at a football match." Now Manchester United come back into it, And we're in the closing minutes, and I can see it now. I've cleared the ball into their half, and Bobby Charms picked it up right in the centre circle, and they've caught us on the break. And Ken Skeen goes to put him under pressure, and Ken Skeen gets cramp just as he's closing it out. I can see him now going full length with the tackle and not being able to move. And Bobby Charlton went forward and hit a ball from 30 yards. Nobody saw. It hit something and came out of goal. It hit the stanchion. It had gone in the goal, and the first bounce was 20 yards out.
We've always had good goalkeepers at Oxford. We had Jim Barron. We had, before that, we had Owen Medlock, who played in the Southern League and whatever. Owen was a good goalkeeper.
One of the biggest characters we ever had was a goalkeeper named Harry Fernley, who was a big Yorkshireman. Back to the days when they played with the fisherman's sweater on, the big roll neck sweater, and this, that, and the other. And in those days, you could sign right up until kick-off time virtually. And I remember we were playing, I think it was Cardiff, and Harry had just been signed, and this big Yorkshireman came out, and we had a goal kick, so we all ran up to the halfway line because he was about 6'2", Harry, and about 14 stone. Left-footed, he kicked it about 5 yards outside the penalty box, and we were all running back. We hadn't realised he was a hopeless kicker. I remember one time at half-time, we were in the dressing room, Arthur Turner's having some words, and all of a sudden, somebody comes rushing in the dressing room, said, "Harry, your missus is on the phone. Apparently the chimney was on fire at home or something in Huddersfield."
Roy Burton, you must have heard stories about him, the goalkeeper. Roy was a tremendous goalkeeper, actually. He made the save this day and broke his arm as he made the save. And it's typical of him. As he carried him off on the stretcher, he still had the ball in. He wouldn't let go of the ball.
Roy Burton's backside, that was famous at the London Road End. They usually saw quite a lot of it during the match. And his hands, that was the thing with Roy Burton. You could put his hand on top of a bucket and pick it up, I think. They were so large.
After training, they used to have a little competition, Hughie and Bertie, where Hughie would line up 6 balls outside the penalty area, and we used to sit behind the goal on the bank down at the training ground and watch these two have this competition. And Hughie Curran used to whack these balls, and Bertie would be everywhere, stopping them top corner, bottom corner, and they used to wind each other up all the time, and it was brilliant watching them.
In the last 18 months became very difficult with the new chairman taking over, bringing his own board in. I thought we could survive with the young players, but it threw a tremendous pressure on them. The manager's always last to know about it, I suppose, when he gets the sack. Joe Mercer rang me up and said, "You're not a manager until you get sacked first time." I says, "Yeah, I know you've said that before, Joe, but it still don't make it any easier."
Oxford Mail, 1st of October 1975. Mr. Jerry Summers, the manager of Oxford United for the past 6.5 seasons, was sacked at a meeting of the Oxford United board last night. He is likely to be succeeded by Mr. Mick Brown, Oxford United assistant manager, but neither Mr. Brown nor the club would comment.
He was well qualified for it, for sure, and I don't think he did badly, though they went down. I think really it was the problem of finance more than anything, that they just couldn't buy experienced players.
I think when we came down from the 2nd to the 3rd division, this is a good memory, there was this match at Orient, which we lost. It must have been a fairly crucial match at the end of the season, and we lost it. And a relegation was assured, and I can remember the Oxford fans calling for the team to come on the pitch, sort of as if they just got promotion.
The dressing room was a horrible place, and some of the senior players, I know, were very, very disappointed. Players that had been at the club a long time and had risen from the 4th up to the 2nd, only then to get relegated back into the 3rd. I think the club policy at the time was to build from the youth. I know they had a scouting area in Scotland, and they brought down Billy Jeffrey and Hughie McGrogan and Andy Bodell. They all played in the first team the same time I did. Mick Tate and Les Taylor from Newcastle. I mean, I think we did well to stay in the 3rd division for a couple of years, because we had all kids, 1 or 2 senior players.
The state of the club in sort of late 70s was really the state of virtually all other struggling 3rd division clubs, which is where we were for most of my time on the board anyway. With a break-even gate, I think in my day we needed about 11,000 through the turnstiles every other Saturday just to break even. and were getting between 4 and 7. So quite clearly, it was a profitable kind of exercise. That was a non-starter.
Oxford Mail, 26th of November 1979. Oxford United chairman Bill Reeves was disgusted by Saturday's FA Cup defeat at Barking, and he was going to the Manor today for a post-mortem on the club's third cup defeat against non-leaguers in 4 years. We were well prepared and the team was well equipped to beat Barking, he said. There can be absolutely no excuse.
When Ian Greaves came to the club, he turned a side that couldn't win very many games. With the same players, he turned us into a side that lost very few games.
Yes, we were in trouble, and the bank was on the verge of pulling the plug and calling in the overdraft. So we were faced with getting new injections of capital or getting a new chairman or new directors. I mean, there were very few options left to us.
Oxford Mail, 2nd of January 1982. Millionaire publisher Robert Maxwell is moving in to take over Oxford United Football Club. Mr. Maxwell, head of Pergamon Press and BPC, has agreed to come to the aid of the club, which, it was revealed today, had only a...
You have to remember that Maxwell bought the whole thing lock, stock and barrel for 120 grand, I think, which must have been a sort of bargain by anybody's judgment.
I remember going to Brighton in the cup, the famous cup match, and that was an unbelievable day.
We went in there, third division side. I think Brighton were placed about 6th in the first division. And we went down there and we blitzed them. I mean, we played out of our skins. Keith Cassell scored a fabulous first goal. And then within 10 minutes, I remember Billy Jeffrey knocked the ball just over the back of their back four about, 16 yards out. And I just ran in and just sweetly knocked it on the volley, and it flew into the bottom corner. Probably one of the best goals I've scored. Of course, that put us 2-0 up. And the second half, a rarity, I scored a header.
Mark Jones, a short ball to John Doyle. John Doyle crosses into the box. United's Cassell's there. Foster's there. Only just as far as Peter Foley. Peter Foley has the ball. It's a goal to United. It's a goal to United. It's a Peter Foley header.
That was maybe the turning point for the club. You know, they got the club. They got the name of the club going again, I think. Jim Smith came in, and then Jim just introduced his new players and got people playing his way, which is a pure footballing way.
I started literally within 2.5 weeks of leaving Birmingham. I was working at Oxford. Ian Greaves had a fallout with Mr. Maxwell and had the chance to go to Wolverhampton Wanderers, and he took that chance, but he'd done a good job here and left a basis of a good side together. In fact, we nearly got promotion in that very first year.
I mean, Jim liked good players. He likes players that can pass the ball well. He likes players that can express themselves, and Jim got some really high quality players to the club then.
People like Mickey Vinter came in, Trevor Hebbard, George Lawrence, Steve Biggins, Steve Hardwick.
Oxford Mail, 18th of April 1983. Oxford United fans have reacted angrily to Chairman Mr. Robert Maxwell's decision to take over Reading Football Club and create a new joint team, Thames Valley Royals. But Mr. Maxwell, whose announcement took the football world by surprise, made it clear today to his critics.
The idea of merging Oxford and Reading, I mean, I think struck anybody, even had a sort of kind of passing sort of interest in football, as being perhaps the most stupid thing anybody could try to do. But Maxwell, in his usual sort of arrogant fashion, boasted that only the Thames flowing backwards would stop this deal going through. And I think some people call it a pitch invasion, other people call it a peaceful protest that marked the start of the game after this deal was announced. I think then Maxwell, looking on the pitch with his family and seeing, I think, the strength of opinion amongst fans, even he must have thought that he made a bit of a whoopsie.
John Truitt came in to midfield, and we set off in the third division and obviously won the championship. Bobby MacDonald came in at left back, and we added John Aldridge to the squad.
I think the best football I ever saw there was from an Oxford team. The first half of a game against, I think it was a replay or the second leg against Newcastle.
Newcastle at the Manor Ground in the first half and the Leeds United game, they were very identical in performances. Both reached fantastic levels of play, really, and would have beat most teams anywhere in the country on them performances. Having beaten Man United and then got Everton at home, I think that was a quarter-final, wasn't it? I know Howard Kendall had seen us a couple of times, and I didn't hear him, but he was walking down the stairs saying to Colin Harvey, his assistant at that time, "Jesus Christ, we've got a task on here."
We had an excellent game. Bobby McDonald scored, and it was only about 10 minutes to go, and we were all celebrating. We thought, what a big scalp. And Kevin Brock just done a back pass, and little Inchy Heath. Oh, I mean, it's just a terrible feeling.
Really, another goal at this stage with 7 minutes remaining. Oxford United 1, Everton 0. Really would finish this tie completely, wouldn't it?
Well, it's finished for me, Nick, at the moment, because there's no threat of Everton whatsoever, and but another goal would be very, very nice indeed, yes.
Oh, what a terrible mistake by Kevin Brock, and it's Adrian Heath in with Everton, and he scored! An appalling back pass there by Kevin Brock. He feeds Adrian Heath. Heath, with the easiest of chances, slips round Steve Harwick, and with 6 minutes remaining, with seemingly no problem.
There were three incidents in that game. The one was when Trevor Hebbard was done by Irvine, and not intentionally, got a bad injury and had to come off. And then Kevin, I think, was so much, we were overconfident really. Reedy was all over him. It was a definite foul. Didn't get it. Turned back and passed it blindly back. And to be fair, he took it very well under the conditions. But if you look at the video, nobody ever mentions Steve Biggins missed an open goal in the last. He should have headed it in the back of the net in literally the last kick of the game. I honestly don't believe that they could have got into the first division without Robert Maxwell coming into the club, and to get somebody like that with that stature at that time, that level of a club was paramount to having a successful team.
All right, he pumped money into the club. He saved the club. He was a larger-than-life figure. He had a lot of contacts. He'd give us publicity. We give him publicity. But I think he was publicity-seeking. I don't think he had the supporters at heart.
Well, I'd obviously heard a bit about him, like you do before you come to a big club. People say, you've got a big chairman, a lot of money, he wears a furry hat and you won't miss him, sort of thing. So, but I remember my first game was when I played against Preston, my debut. And I'd had a couple of interviews on the radio and things. And I was just about 2:30, and Jim called me into his office, and I thought he was going to drop me. I thought, crikey, I'm being dropped away, I haven't played yet. And he said, the chairman wants to meet you. So he said, Robert Maxwell, like Peter Osborne. Hello, chairman, sort of thing, like you do. And he said, pleased to meet you, how are you? So I said, fine, thank you, looking forward to the game. Yep, fine, being polite, and couldn't really work out why I was being introduced. And he said, well, hopefully if you can play football like you talk on the radio, he said, you'll be a bloody good player, he said,
Trevor Hebbard particularly, I thought that was an outstanding player for us. And to be honest, the two lads who stayed there, who were always there, Gary Briggs and Malcolm Shotton, were the foundation of the team. And it enabled likes of Kevin Brock to blossom. Billy Hamilton, again, impressed me when he played for Burnley. I've known him a long time, and I spoke to John Bond about him, and John said, well, he can't play, but he'll get you 20 goals a year. Well, I thought, I'll settle for that, 20 goals in a year. But Billy could also play. Anybody who plays at the level he played at for Northern Ireland regularly must be able to play, and he was a much better player than I anticipated. In fact, fairness, if I look back, when we played at our best, he was probably one of the best footballing sides that I ever managed. And when we were decimating teams 5s and 4s at home regularly, you knew that he'd got a good side.
Surely referee Eddie Scales is going to blow his whistle any minute now. He's looked at his watch, he's put his notebook in his back pocket, and it's United in possession down the right flank with Aldridge. Ball running off though, McLaren, and it's a throw on to Oxford, some 10 yards from the Shrewsbury goal line. The referee's saying, come on, let's hurry things along, and he's blown his whistle. Oxford United are in the First Division.
It did amaze me when we won promotion and went round the city on the bus stop there, how many people turned out.
I remember we were sitting eating a meal and saw them coming along, so I went out to the door and just gave them a wave. There weren't too many people in this area waving. And Jim Smith talking about it afterwards on the radio, I heard him say the little grey-haired men and women coming to the and waving to us. I thought, oh, he's got me spotted.
We were at Leeds. I had to go to a live televised interview with Saints and Greaves down at Ellen Road early, about 12:30 or something like that, and I didn't know, but Maxwell had been on the television to say that we wouldn't play at the Manor Ground in the First Division, and that was the first question they asked me, and I didn't even know anything about it, and I tended to say that was a load of rubbish, really, that we would be playing at the Manor Ground next year. Mr. Maxwell's a fine political man, and he's obviously working at getting a new ground eventually. I then got a phone call at Ellen Road at 2 o'clock to tell me, or ask me whether I was going to pay the wages, because we couldn't afford First Division wages playing at the Manor Ground, and I'd gone against my chairman on national television.
Jim had told me, Jim Smith, that things were not going well between him and the chairman, and almost certainly he was going to look to move on, and he asked me to go with him. But I felt a certain allegiance to Mr. Maxwell. He, after all, had rescued me from the scrap heap and given me a job, and I felt that I should stay. And I got a phone call early one morning. Hello, Robert Maxwell here. Jim Smith has resigned with my blessing, and you will be taking over as manager. And I said, oh, no, I won't, Mr. Maxwell, no, no, no.
If he'd have given me the contract I wanted, which wasn't nowhere near as good as the contract I got at QPR anyway, so it wasn't as if I was asking for enormous monies. I would have stayed at Oxford, obviously, and one of the biggest regrets I have in football is that I never managed Oxford United in the First Division, even if it had only been for one game.
He said, well, would you be prepared to just take over as caretaker until we can appoint someone? I said, yes, I'll do that. So he said, good, good. So the season started, and the first game was away at West Brom, I think, which we drew. And then we came at home to Tottenham, which we drew. And then we played, I think it was Leicester, on the Saturday, and we beat them 5-0. Well, of course, everyone was happy, and Mr. Maxwell, being the clever man that he was, knew that now was the time to pounce and get me.
Oxford Mail, 24th of September 1985. Oxford United, the team who love to shock in the Milk Cup, begin this year's campaign in an unaccustomed position. United face 4th Division Northampton Town in tonight's second-round first-leg tie at the Manor, with manager Maurice Evans proclaiming, now the boots on the other.
We struggled here, and I seem to remember them missing a penalty late on, and I thought we were very, very fortunate to survive. Gradually, we seemed to be progressing, and no one was talking about us, and we were certainly not thinking about getting to Wembley. And then suddenly we ended up in the semi-final, and now we were playing Aston Villa. And we went up there and we drew 2 each. And so all we had to do was beat them here. And there we were at Wembley.
2-0 up, couldn't believe it. And then it was 2-1 last couple of minutes. And we just had to defend for our lives. And everybody just busted a gut and defended. And as soon as that final whistle went, something just sparked off in my brain, and I just went absolutely balmy. Went running up to the London Road End boys. Wembley, this is it. It was just a massive stir, people jumping up and down, yellow and blue, people screaming and shouting and hugging and kissing each other.
It was a dream to us to be there at Wembley, because there used to be a standing joke. They say, when I think Ronnie Atkinson was captain in those days, they said, well, Ronnie, when you get to Wembley, you shake hands with the king. But, we've got a queen. Oh, there'll be a king by the time you get there. So, and that sort of thing.
As a child, that was the impossible dream that Oxford would be at Wembley. You know, that was the thing of fantasy. And then it actually happened, and everyone dismissing the chances.
Oh, I remember the whole day. you know, setting out quite early in the morning, flags and scarves out of every window. Going down the M40, it's just sort of a whole mass of Oxford supporters tooting their horns, waving, you know, sticking their thumbs up. It's just amazing atmosphere.
Would we get there on time? And of course we did, probably about an hour and a half early in the end, but there was still that panic that you might miss it.
And it was definitely odd seeing our ex-manager leading out Queen's Park Rangers.
It is the most incredible welcome. As I say, Jim Smith and Maurice Evans, tremendous friends, having a chat as they walk out. They're now both walking towards the centre circle for the presentation. Both sets of players and the referee, Mr. Keith Hackett, are going to be presented to Sir Keith.
The strangest point was when we're coming out of the tunnel, and I was literally talking to all the Oxford players more than I was talking to my players, because they were more my players than the QPR players, really.
I remember walking out, of course, with Jim, and I remember the turf being very wet. It had rained during the morning. You see all this sea of faces, and most of them seemed to be from Oxford, and I thought, dear me, I mean, we've got some tremendous support here. I hope we do well.
And what I really wanted an idea where was a fantastic game that QPR won 4-3 or something like that, but out in the early stages of the game, in all honesty, I was more concerned it was going to be a crap game and nobody come out with it any credit. But once whoever got the first goal, I thought was going to win, and Oxford got it.
John Truitt there again, and it falls to Phillips. Phillips to Truitt. Truitt a little clip up the field as far as Charles. Charles now to Aldridge. Aldridge getting a good ball in now for Trevor Hebbard. Hebbard going forward on the edge of the box. The angle's a little bit tight. Hebbard still turns away. Hebbard with a chance. Hebbard shoots. It's gone. Trevor Hebbard's done it. Oh, what a goal by Trevor Hebbard. A tremendous run through. Pandemonium away to our left. Wembley Stadium has gone all yellow and blue. What a one by Trevor Hebbard.
He got the ball at a very acute angle. I thought it had gone the other side of the post. And everybody was, it's in! It's in! And everybody went up in the blinking air. They nearly went mad, you know.
At half-time, I can remember looking up, walking off the pitch at half-time. I looked up and said about the milk cup, have you got the bottle? And I thought, that's just what I need at half-time. And I said to them, now then, you're in the driving seat now, have you got the bottle to win it? Because that's all you need now. That's all you need. You're there, virtually.
There's Kevin Brock still through. Houghton now setting Hebbard free. Hebbard in a very similar position as he was in the first half. Some more defenders near him. Hebbard cuts inside, lays the ball into Houghton. Houghton scored! Houghton has done it! Tremendous build-up there by Trevor Hebbard. Keeps his cool, lays the ball inside to Houghton. Houghton runs away to his left to the mass ranks of Oxford United fans. What a goal from Ray Houghton. What some tremendous play by Trevor Hebbard. Oxford United 2, Queen's Park Rangers 0.
I never felt so elated in all my life when the second goal went in. And I thought, God, 2-0. I wonder if they'll get back. I wonder if they'll get back.
I mean, I couldn't believe how well we played.
Poor old Jim Smith, our ex-manager there, as well, and everybody was sort of shouting, you should have stayed at the Manor and all this business.
They kept chanting that, you should have stayed at the Manor. And that kept ringing true to me, and I thought, you should have done, Jim. You should have stayed at the Manor. I wish you had done.
Good ball forward now to John Aldridge. John Aldridge breaking down the right over the halfway line. It's John Aldridge, faced now by Robbie James. He knocks the ball into Trevor Hebbard. Hebbard still going forward, back to John Aldridge. Aldridge going forward. It's a great chance for Aldridge. Aldridge shoots it safe, and it falls to Jeremy Charles. Jeremy Charles has done it. Oh, Jeremy Charles has brought the cup to Oxford. Surely that is it. Aldridge's shot, first saved by the goalkeeper. It runs to Jeremy Charles. Jeremy Charles has put it in the net.
I can remember the players in the last 10 minutes passing the ball about. Ray Houghton, Trevor Herbert, Kevin Brock, Les Phillips, and I can remember them keeping the ball and laughing, smiling, and I thought, well, this is it. I've never seen this before, where players actually are having a laugh on the field, particularly in a prize as big as this, the Milk Cup final.
I mean, it was amazing that as soon as the final whistle went, we celebrated for about 5-10 minutes, and we looked at the other end, and it was just completely empty. It was I've never seen a stadium empty so quickly.
I didn't know where to put myself, and I was walking off. At the end, we had to walk off. Everybody had to walk off. Was the Oxford United end, and all the fans said, sang there's only one Jim Smith, which was a fantastic feeling, and obviously helped me, and I appreciated that.
Malcolm Shotton, skipper of Oxford United, climbs those famous Wembley steps to pick up the Milk Cup.
See Ken Fish go up the steps to receive the medal instead of Maurice Evans. That was a good touch by him, because he's been at Oxford for years on end.
Shaking hands with people as he goes on his way. He's still wearing Peter Baker's hat. Number 6 on his back, Malcolm Shott. He's followed by the goalkeeper.
Yeah, Malcolm Shotton with his hat, with his little horns on, doing his little jig. That really sticks in the mind.
Played at Leicester City, back into non-league football in the Nuneaton United, and here he is, the greatest moment of Malcolm Shotton's life.
It was almost as if it was inevitable that we were going to win. It was like our day. It was our season, our day for that cup.
With Sir Stephen Roberts, the chairman of the Milk Marketing Board, he gets a hug from Robert Maxwell, the chairman of Oxford United.
Greatest day of my life in football, I think. It was like a reward for everything, what you'd done up there. Really great. I mean, nobody could ever think of a club like Oxford ever winning a final at Wembley.
There, the cup now being presented. Malcolm Shotton kisses it and holds it up. The Milk Cup is on its way to Oxford.